I really think Mrs. Blossom didn't get her due when she showed up in the Tess Monahan books. Yes, Tess underestimated her, but maybe I did too. And I I had written two pretty dark books back to back with really unpleasant characters. I mean, I'm Prom Mom and Dream Girl. There's not anyone you really want to be friends with. I mean, forget it's way beyond, are there likable characters? It's are there redeemable characters? And that's hard to say in those two books. And I wanted for my own creativity and for my own mental health, I wanted to spend time with someone I kind of liked. It's a long slog writing a book, and I was ready to just hunker down with someone who was good company. And there was Mrs. Blossom. Now, I was probably in my late 40s when I created Mrs. Blossom, definitely in my 40s. And so she used to be a lot older than I am. But now, lo and behold, she's only a couple of years older than I am. And I I did not realize I was doing this for a long time. I don't think I realized until I finished the book that as different as Mrs. Blossom and I are, and we are very different in terms of our temperament. She's shy and modest. I'm loud and extroverted. She's very unworldly. I've traveled a lot. I've seen a lot of things. I've met a lot of famous people. So, as different as we might seem in that way, we were both sort of in the same situation. We were women in our 60s living lives that did not look the way we expected our life to look in our 60s. She's a widow. She's been a caretaker to her grandchildren, but now they're older and she's not needed to do that anymore. So she's starting over, moving back to Baltimore, buying an apartment. My marriage ended 5 years ago. And it shouldn't have been unexpected, but it kind of was. But, so I was like, oh, wait, this isn't the life I thought I was going to be living. What's going on here? And I realized that for both of us, even though our lives were not what we expected, maybe they were better. Maybe there were things that were more interesting about our lives than we had um, thought they were going to be. So, as I said, I did not put this together until the book was done. But, I just wanted to write a book about a woman in her 60s who was learning to do new things. Well, first of all, it's just a classic. It's straight out of the Agatha Christie playbook. So there's that. In a cozy mystery, and Murder Takes a Vacation is very much by design a cozy mystery. You want the sense of a closed community where people know each other and they're all interacting. So, often that's a village. It could be a boarding school, but it works very well on a ship, especially on a small cruise ship, because this is a very small river cruise. It's not one of those big ocean liners with, you know, a swimming pool with a slide and a huge ballroom. It's small, it's cozy. There were fewer than I based it on a trip I took with fewer than 100 passengers, and that is kind of perfect for this kind of mystery. I mean, even though it's not revealed for a while in the book, I don't think it spoils anything for people to know that Mrs. Blossom very quickly becomes the focus of a lot of people because everyone presumes that she knows something about this missing statue, which is an antiquity from Pakistan. And she says very sensibly, I'm pretty sure I would know if I had a statue. Like, even a small one. That's a hard thing to hide in a lady's suitcase. And, a cruise was just kind of perfect because, again, they're cloistered in a sense, but then there are all these ports of call. You get to go to Normandy, which is a place I've been to twice and really, really like. You you get to see Monet's home, which is amazing. You go to these little French villages. It's it's perfect. I mean, and I had originally planned to do this working totally within my imagination. Huge fan of Donald Westlake. And he used to maintain that if you use your imagination correctly, you barely have to do any research. And by the way, he proved that. I think his last published book was a Dortmunder about the world of reality television. And I would bet you anything that he did hardly any research. He didn't have to. He's just amazing that way. So I had my closed community. You get an interesting cast of characters. Like you're going to meet some people who are, just shipboard pals, and then you're going to meet other people who have bad intentions, and then there'll be the tour guides, and maybe you'll meet the captain, and it's just all a blast. It's probably the hardest book I've ever written. Dying is easy, comedy is hard, lightness is tough. We talked earlier in this conversation about the importance of stakes, about having a character in peril. And, the cozy, you can send a man through the door with a gun, as Raymond Chandler famously said. You don't have a serial killer. You don't have bodies turning up every other chapter. That's not what it is. So it was a tough book, and I was working with a new editor, and she put me through the toughest rewrites of my career, which, there was some sheepishness because I was like, gosh, I hope my new editor doesn't think I'm an idiot. She didn't. She just felt that she could keep pushing me. And she was right. She didn't give me a single bum note. I didn't disagree with anything she said. She was pushing me to make this book as emotionally resonant as it could be. The plot was always fine. There were some things that she suggested that were really key. But what she wanted to make sure is that the book was not slight, that it had this emotional heft to it, because I think she figured out that the heart of the book, yes, there's a missing art object, and yes, there's a murder, and all of these questions will be answered, and that's important. But what's really important is, where does Mrs. Blossom end up at the end of this journey? Has she changed? Has she learned something? Is she better off for all of these adventures? I will say, in writing Murder Takes a Vacation, there was one thing, like, I don't think it spoils anything that, Mrs. Blossom survives this book, obviously. And I said, whatever happens, she's going to save herself. That's the most important thing in this book, is that she will be the person who ultimately saves herself.